So this will be the Unit 3 review of cell functions. The main objectives of this unit were to talk about what cells are made of, specifically talking about organic molecules and their roles, how cells digest and synthesize materials using enzymes, the environmental conditions that affect those, how plant cells create energy, and also how we use that energy to make usable cellular energy, and then lastly, how cells reproduce through mitosis. So remember that there's three kinds of molecules really, or that we talked about. We talked about monomers. These are the single units or building blocks. Polymers are when you put a bunch of monomers together to build a longer chain or multiple units, which are more complex. And then we also talked about organic compounds. So these generally are bigger molecules. They make up all living things, and that's where we get that word organic. So the four different organic compounds, first is carbohydrates. This is really used for energy. So the two main carbohydrates that we talked about are starch and glucose. Starch is the complex carbohydrate or the polymer, and glucose is the simple carbohydrate, the building block or monomer. Lipids, we also talked about, are really used for energy storage, and they're also used to give the cell membrane structure. Lipid is the macromolecule or the polymer, and the building blocks or the monomers of those are fatty acids and glycerol. Proteins. One of the key ideas of proteins is that shape determines function. This is true with three different kinds of proteins that we really talked about in class: enzymes, antibodies when we talked about immunity, and also receptors on the cell membranes. Remember that protein is the macromolecule or the polymer, and amino acids are the building blocks or the monomers. Lastly, we've got nucleic acids. These are really used to code the genetic information in the cell. So DNA and RNA both get that Na from the word nucleic acid. Nucleic acid is the macromolecule or the polymer, and nucleotides are the building blocks or monomers. And we'll get into that more when we do Unit 8 about genetics. So things we need to know about enzymes. Well, the shape determines the function, so it's very much like a lock and key. It matches with the substrate, and there are two kinds of reactions that enzymes generally do. They're either synthesis, where they're making something, putting things together, or digestion, where they're breaking, taking things apart. One thing that I do want to mention that's not in here is that there is an optimal or best pH and temperature. So remember that enzymes work really well at certain temperatures and certain pH levels that measure the acidity and how basic a substance is. So keep that in mind as well when you think of enzymes. Photosynthesis and cellular respiration are really connected here. So photosynthesis, remember, only occurs in plants. There's also some algae and other organisms, but it does not occur in any animals. It also is happening inside the chloroplast, which we talked about in Unit 2. The main purpose of photosynthesis is to convert light energy to glucose, right? It's the only organism, the only process that allows us to take sunlight and actually make it into something that we can use for energy. So the reactants, remember, are carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight, and the products are oxygen and glucose. Cell respiration, on the other hand, is the opposite of this. So cell respiration, first of all, occurs in all organisms, so it includes plants and animals, and it happens in the mitochondrion. You'll notice on the picture it says mitochondria. Just keep in mind that's more than one, and mitochondrion is one. And the main purpose is to take that glucose and make it usable energy, so make it ATP that the cell can use. The reactants are the same as the products for photosynthesis. So we've got oxygen and glucose. Remember, this process kind of connects and cycles through with photosynthesis. So you can see the picture is one big circle. The products of cell respiration are carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. Don't forget to write out your 2 questions for understanding as well as their answers.